Welcome to Study Watch. Welcome to a deep dive into consumer behavior and marketing communications. We've got a stack of marketing textbook excerpts and study guides you guys gave us so we can really get into what makes us tick as consumers.
Yeah, it's amazing how much psychology goes into our everyday decisions. As consumers, we don't even realize half the time what's influencing us.
It really does feel like we're on autopilot sometimes, especially with those impulse buys, at the checkout line.
Well, even those impulse buys, right, are often driven by these kind of deeper psychological needs and motivations. You remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Oh yeah, that pyramid thing. Yeah, I remember learning about it. But how does it apply to marketing?
So marketers are constantly trying to appeal to different levels of that pyramid. So a brand selling luxury cars might focus on esteem needs, so the desire for status and recognition. And so their ads might feature successful people driving their cars, subtly suggesting that you too can achieve that level of success if you buy their product.
So it's not even about the car itself, it's about the image and the feeling it projects.
Exactly. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have brands that target our basic needs for safety and security. Think about insurance companies or home security systems. Their marketing often plays on our fears and anxieties, right? Making us feel vulnerable and then offering their product as the solution.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not just selling a product, they're selling peace of mind.
Right. It's all about understanding what drives us both consciously and subconsciously. And that kind of brings us to this concept of motivation, which is the force that propels us to fulfill a need.
So it's like the why behind the what. We might all need to eat lunch, but why do I sometimes crave a salad and other times want a greasy burger?
You hit the nail on the head. It's about understanding those individual motives. Maybe you're dieting and focused on healthy choices, or maybe you're craving comfort food after a long day. And so marketers try to anticipate these different motivations and tailor their messages accordingly.
So when I'm scrolling through Instagram and suddenly get a craving for pizza after seeing that cheesy ad, it's not just a coincidence.
Not necessarily. They're using visuals and messaging designed to trigger a specific response, in this case, a craving for pizza. And they're getting pretty good at targeting those ads based on, your past behavior and preferences.
That's both fascinating and a little creepy. But are all motivations created equal? I mean, some things feel like more of a necessity than a want.
Absolutely. And the materials you've provided, they actually delve into different types of motivations, like intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivations, they come from within, like the joy of learning a new skill or the satisfaction of helping others. So these are often tied to, personal growth and fulfillment.
Okay, those sound pretty wholesome. What about the not so wholesome ones?
Well, that's where extrinsic motivations come in. These are driven by external factors like rewards recognition or social pressure. Think about buying a designer handbag because you want to impress your friends or fit in with a certain crowd.
Oh yeah, the keeping up with the Joneses thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel that pressure sometimes, especially with social media, constantly showcasing the perfect lifestyle.
Definitely. Social media has definitely amplified those extrinsic motivations, and marketers are really aware of this. They use social media to create this aspirational content, showcasing products and experiences that make us feel like we need to have them, in order to be happy or successful.
It's like they're playing on our insecurities and desires.
They're definitely tapping into those underlying psychological triggers. The materials you gave us also touch on the distinction between hedonic and utilitarian motivations, which I think is particularly relevant here.
Okay, break those down for me.
Okay, so think about buying a new coffee maker. A utilitarian motivation would be purely practical, like you need a coffee maker because your old one broke. But a hedonic motivation is about seeking pleasure or enjoyment. You might buy a fancy espresso machine because you love the ritual of making, a perfect latte at home.
So even something as simple as a cup of coffee can have multiple layers of motivation behind it.
Exactly. And marketers often play to both sides. So highlighting both the practical benefits and the emotional appeal of their products. Think about Starbucks. They sell the convenience and caffeine fix, right, the utilitarian, but they also sell the experience, the ambiance, the feeling of treating yourself. So that's the hedonic.
I've never thought about it that way, but it's so true. I mean, they've created this whole culture around coffee. It's not even just a drink, it's a lifestyle.
And that's what makes marketing so fascinating. It's about understanding the complex interplay of Needs, motivations, and desires that drive our choices.
It's like they're decoding our inner workings.
In a way, they are. And the more we understand about these tactics, the better equipped we are to make, conscious decisions as consumers.
Speaking of conscious decisions, I feel like some purchases require way more thought than others. Like, I don't agonize over choosing a brand of toothpaste, but buying a new car is like a whole different story.
Right. That brings us to the concept of consumer involvement, which refers to the level of effort and energy we put into a purchase decision. It's a spectrum ranging from low-involvement purchases like toothpaste or toilet paper to high-involvement purchases like a car or a house.
Okay, so involvement basically means how much we care about the purchase.
Exactly. And the level of involvement is often tied to the perceived risk associated with the purchase. The higher the risk, the more involved we become in the decision-making process.
So buying a house is a high-involvement purchase because there's so much at stake financially, emotionally, practically. But choosing a brand of cereal is low involvement because the consequences of making a bad choice are pretty minimal.
Precisely. And what's interesting is that some brands have figured out how to increase involvement even in low involvement categories.
Really? How do they do that?
Well, take toilet paper, for example. Not exactly the most glamorous product, but Charmin has managed to create a whole persona around it with those adorable Charmin bears and their clever campaigns. They've made toilet paper fun and engaging, even relatable.
I never thought I'd be discussing toilet paper in such depth, but I have to admit those bears are pretty cute.
They've done a brilliant job of elevating a mundane product and making people think about it differently. And by increasing involvement even slightly, they've managed to create stronger brand loyalty and differentiate themselves in a really crowded market.
That's a great example of how marketing can influence our perceptions, even for products we might not normally give a lot of thought to. But you mentioned perceived risk earlier. What are some of the different types of risks consumers consider?
The materials you provided outlines several key types, including financial risk, technological risk, physical risk, functional risk, and time risk.
Okay, those make sense, but there's a couple more on that list, right?
Yeah.
Social risk and psychological risk.
Yes. Those are particularly interesting because they delve into how our purchases affect our self-perception and how others see us.
So like buying a designer dress because you want to fit in with a certain group or impress your friends.
Exactly. That's a classic example of social risk. We worry about how others will perceive our choices, especially when it comes to things like fashion cars or even the breed of dog we choose.
I can definitely relate to that. I remember agonizing over buying my first grown-up car. I wanted something stylish and reliable, but I also didn't want it to seem like I was trying too hard or spending beyond my means.
It's a delicate balance. And then there's psychological risk, which is about how the purchase makes us feel about ourselves. Does it align with our values, our self-image, our aspirations?
So if I'm really passionate about sustainability, I might hesitate to buy a product with a large carbon footprint, even if it's cheaper or more convenient.
Exactly. Your values are influencing your decision-making process. And marketers try to anticipate and mitigate these risks in various ways. They might offer money-back guarantees to reduce financial risk, provide detailed product information to address technological concerns, or emphasize the social status associated with their brand to alleviate, social anxieties.
It's like they're playing chess with our minds, anticipating our every worry and trying to counter it with a marketing message.
That's a great way to put it. They're constantly studying consumer behavior, trying to figure out how to nudge us towards a purchase by addressing our concerns and appealing to our desires.
It's a little mind-boggling when you think about it. We like to think we're in control of our decisions, but there's a whole lot happening beneath the surface that's influencing our choices.
That's why it's so important to be aware of these tactics and to understand the psychology behind them. Once you see the string, so to speak, you can start to make more conscious and informed decisions as a consumer.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. Needs motivations, risk perception, social influence. It's a complex web of factors that ultimately lead us to click that buy now button.
And we haven't even gotten to the role of emotions yet?
Oh yeah, emotions. We like to think we're rational beings, but let's be honest, feelings play a huge role in our decisions, especially when it comes to shopping.
Absolutely. And that's where things get really interesting.
So you're saying, even when we think we're being all rational, our emotions are secretly pulling the strings.
Often, yeah. And marketers know this. They use emotions to, grab our attention, create these memorable experiences, and ultimately influence our buying behavior.
It's like those ASPCA commercials with Sarah McLachlan singing in the background. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a total mess by the end of those.
That's a classic example of emotional advertising, and studies show it's incredibly effective. Ads with these really strong emotional appeals, they actually outperform those with purely rational messages.
But why? Why are emotions so powerful? What's happening in our brains when we see those ads?
Well, it's all about how our brains are wired. Emotional content triggers a faster response in our brains than rational thought, so we react emotionally before we even have time to analyze, the message logically.
So they're like bypassing our logical mind and going straight for the heartstrings.
Exactly. They're creating associations between their brand and, positive emotions like joy, love, or excitement. Or they might use negative emotions like fear or guilt to kind of motivate us to take action.
Like those insurance commercials that show a family devastated by an accident. It's hard not to feel a sense of urgency after seeing that.
That's the point. They're tapping into our primal instincts, our fear of loss, and our desire to protect, our loved ones. It's a powerful motivator.
So it's not just about selling a product, it's about selling a feeling, an idea, a way of life.
You got it. And some of the most effective campaigns, they combine humor, heartwarming storytelling, and a powerful message. Think about that Dunkin' Donuts Super Bowl commercial with Ben Affleck working the drive-thru.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious. Who doesn't love a good celebrity cameo with a dash of self-deprecating humor?
It was brilliant. They managed to create this buzzworthy moment that everyone was talking about, and it felt authentic, which is really key in today's marketing landscape.
On the flip side, you have campaigns like Dove's #TurnYourBack, which tackle the issue of social media distortion and its impact on self-esteem.
That was a bold move for a brand to address such a sensitive topic, but it clearly resonated with their audience. It sparked important conversations and positioned Dove as a brand that cares about something more than just selling products.
It seems like emotional marketing done right can actually have a positive impact beyond just, boosting sales.
Absolutely. When brands tap into genuine emotions and values, they can connect with consumers on a deeper level and even inspire, positive change. But as consumers, we also need to be mindful of how these techniques are being used.
So it's all about finding that balance between our emotional responses and a rational decision-making process.
Exactly. We can't let our emotions completely dictate our choices, but we also don't want to be cold and calculating all the time, right? It's about being aware of that interplay between our heart and our head.
So how do marketers even begin to measure something as subjective as emotions? I mean, it's not like they can hook us up to a lie detector test every time we see an ad.
Well, that's where things like neuromarketing come in. They use these techniques like brain imaging and biometric tracking to kind of measure our physiological responses to marketing stimuli.
So they can actually see what's happening in our brains when we watch a commercial.
It's getting more sophisticated all the time. They can track things like eye movement, heart rate, even brainwave activity to see how we're responding to different messages and visuals.
Wow, it's like they have a window into our subconscious.
In a way they do, and this data helps them fine-tune their campaigns to make them even more emotionally engaging and persuasive.
It's a little unnerving, but also fascinating to think about the level of research and analysis that goes into modern marketing.
Absolutely. It's a constantly evolving field and one that's heavily influenced by technology and social trends.
Speaking of technology and social trends, let's talk about social media. I feel like that's a whole other beast when it comes to consumer behavior.
Oh, it is. Social media has completely transformed the way we interact with brands and consume information. It's this constant stream of content reviews, recommendations, and targeted advertising.
It's like a giant cocktail party where everyone's talking about their favorite products and experiences, and marketers are desperately trying to get heard above the noise.
That's a great analogy, and it's only getting louder with the rise of new platforms like TikTok, which has kind of taken the world by storm.
I know. You practically can't scroll through any social media feed without seeing a TikTok dance or challenge. It's everywhere.
It's a perfect example of how quickly the social media landscape can change, and marketers need to be agile and adaptable to keep up with these trends.
So it's not just about being present on every platform. It's about understanding how to use each one effectively.
Exactly. You need to tailor your content to the specific platform and audience. For example, what works on Instagram might not work on TikTok or LinkedIn. Each platform has its own unique culture and user base.
All this talk about social media reminds me of something I read about P&G and Unilever pulling back from digital advertising a few years ago. What was that all about?
That was a major turning point. These two giants of the consumer goods industry, they decided to actually reduce their digital ad spending because of concerns about transparency and fraud.
Transparency and fraud. What does that even mean in the context of social media?
Well, it's a few things. First, there was this growing concern about bots, so these automated accounts that inflate views, likes, and followers.
So brands were essentially paying for like fake engagement.
In some cases, yeah, and that's a huge waste of money. There were also issues with ad misplacement, so ads appearing alongside inappropriate or offensive content, which could really damage a brand's reputation.
It's a nightmare scenario for any company. Imagine your wholesome, family-friendly product being advertised next to something controversial or hateful.
Exactly, and then there were concerns about data privacy violations. Remember, social media platforms collect a ton of information about, our online behavior.
Oh, they know everything about us, don't they? What we like, what we buy, where we go, who we talk to.
And that data is incredibly valuable to marketers, but there were instances where this data was being misused or mishandled, leading to privacy breaches and scandals.
So P&G and Unilever were basically saying, hold on a minute, we need more accountability and transparency in this digital Wild West.
Exactly. They wanted to make sure their ad dollars were being spent wisely and that their brands were being protected. And this sent like a shockwave through the industry, forcing social media platforms to address these concerns and improve their practices.
It's good to know that even the biggest companies are willing to push for change when things aren't right.
It definitely set a precedent, and consumers are becoming more savvy too. We're more aware of how our data is being used, and we're demanding more control over, our online privacy.
Speaking of savvy consumers, let's talk about the power of word of mouth in the social media age.
Yeah.
Everyone's a critic these days, right?
That's right. Consumers have a powerful voice online. They can share their experiences, both good and bad, with a massive audience.
And we all know that a negative review can spread like wildfire.
It's true. The sources actually mentioned that negative word of mouth is more impactful than positive word of mouth. We tend to pay more attention to negative reviews because we want to avoid, making the same mistakes.
It makes sense. It's like that saying, one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch.
And in the digital age, that bad apple can reach a global audience in a matter of hours.
So how do companies deal with this? It must be like a constant battle to manage their online reputation.
It is. They need to be proactive and responsive. That means monitoring social media for mentions of their brand, addressing negative feedback, quickly and effectively, and encouraging positive reviews from satisfied customers.
It's like a full-time job just keeping up with the conversation.
It is, and many companies have dedicated teams to handle, their social media presence. They use tools to track mentions, analyze sentiment, and engage with their audience.
And then there are those influencer marketing campaigns. It seems like everyone with a decent social media following is trying to sell something these days.
It's a booming industry. Brands are partnering with influencers to reach their target audience in a more authentic and engaging way.
It's like getting a recommendation from a friend rather than seeing like a traditional ad.
Exactly. Influencers have built this trust and credibility with their followers, so their recommendations carry more weight.
But how do brands know if these campaigns are actually working?
Well, there are key metrics they track, such as engagement rate, reach, click-through rate, conversion rate, cost per acquisition, and even sentiment analysis. They want to see if the influencer's audience is actually interacting with the content, clicking on links, and ultimately making purchases.
So it's not just about like vanity metrics like likes and followers. It's about driving real business results.
Precisely, and that requires careful planning, execution, and measurement.
So we've got social media marketing influencer campaigns. What else is happening in the digital world that's impacting consumer behavior?
Well, one trend that's gaining traction is social commerce, so the ability to actually buy products directly through social media platforms.
Wait, so I could scroll through Instagram and buy that cute dress I just saw without even leaving the app?
That's the idea. It's about making the shopping experience seamless and integrated with, our social media habits.
That's pretty convenient. But are people actually buying things this way?
It's still relatively new in the US, but it's growing rapidly in other parts of the world, particularly in Asia.
I guess it makes sense. I mean, we're spending so much time on these platforms already. Why not just shop there too, right?
That's the thinking, but there are some challenges.
Like what?
Well, some consumers have concerns about security and privacy when making purchases through social media.
I could see why. I mean, it's one thing to share a funny meme, but it's another thing to enter your credit card information on a platform that's known for, like, data breaches.
Right, and some people just prefer the traditional online shopping experience. They like having a separate shopping cart, browsing different stores and comparing prices.
So social commerce is still a work in progress, but it's definitely something to watch.
Absolutely. And it highlights the fact that consumer behavior is constantly evolving, driven by technological advancements and changing social norms.
Speaking of evolving, what about these brand communities I've been hearing about?
Ah, yes. These are online communities formed around like a shared passion for a particular brand or product. Think of it like a virtual fan club.
So instead of just liking a brand on Facebook, people are actually joining groups and having conversations about it.
That's right. And these communities can be incredibly powerful for brands.
How so?
Well, for one thing, it creates a sense of belonging and loyalty among members. People feel like they're part of something special, something bigger than just a customer-brand relationship.
It's like they're brand ambassadors spreading the word and advocating for the products they love.
Exactly. And these communities provide valuable insights for brands. They can gather feedback on new products, identify trends, and even co-create new offerings with their most passionate fans.
It's like a built-in focus group, always ready to provide feedback and ideas.
And it's all happening organically, driven by the enthusiasm of the community members.
The sources mentioned Lego ideas as a great example of this. People can submit their own designs for new Lego sets, and the most popular ones actually get produced.
It's a brilliant strategy. It taps into the creativity of the Lego fan base, generates buzz, and ensures that the products they release are things that people actually want.
That's amazing. I love how they're empowering their customers to be part of the creative process.
It's a win-win situation. Consumers feel valued and heard, and brands get access to a wealth of ideas and insights.
Okay, I'm sold on the power of brand communities, but let's be honest, not all online interactions are positive. There's a dark side to social media too, right?
Unfortunately, yes. We've talked about data privacy concerns, but there's also the issue of cyberbullying, hate speech, and the spread of misinformation.
It can be a toxic environment sometimes, and it's hard to know what to believe.
It's a constant challenge, and it's important for brands to be mindful of these issues and to take steps to protect, their customers and their own reputation.
So they need to be like responsible citizens of the digital world.
Exactly. And that means being aware of the potential risks, promoting positive online behavior, and taking a stand against harmful content.
It's a lot to juggle, but it sounds like a crucial part of navigating the social media landscape effectively.
It is, and it highlights the fact that marketing communications in the digital age is not just about selling products, it's about building trust, fostering authentic connections, and making a positive impact.
So it's about more than just the bottom line. It's about values, ethics, and social responsibility.
You nailed it. Consumers are increasingly looking for brands that align with their values and that are making a positive contribution to the world.
That makes sense. I mean, people want to feel good about the products they buy and the companies they support.
And social media has given consumers a powerful platform to voice their opinions and hold brands accountable.
It's like a constant feedback loop. Brands need to listen to their customers and adapt to their evolving expectations.
Exactly. It's a two-way conversation now. And the brands that are thriving are the ones that are embracing this dialogue and building genuine relationships with their customers.
So it's not just about like broadcasting a message, it's about creating a community.
Precisely, and that requires authenticity, transparency, and a willingness to engage in meaningful conversations.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from Maslow's hierarchy of needs to the complexities of social media marketing. It's incredible how much goes into understanding consumer behavior.
It's a fascinating field and one that's constantly evolving, as technology and society change.
But what I'm really curious about is how all of this applies to me personally. I mean, everyone's different, right?
Absolutely. Each individual has their own unique set of needs, motivations, and experiences that shape their consumer behavior. But there are certain frameworks and models that can help us understand, the underlying psychology that drives our choices.
Like the ATO model you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. The attitude toward the object model, it helps us understand how our attitudes towards a particular brand or product are formed and how those attitudes influence our purchasing decisions.
Okay, remind me how that works again. It's been a while since Marketing 101.
It basically measures two things. First, the importance we place on certain product attributes, and second, our belief about how well a particular brand performs on those attributes.
So, for example, if I'm buying a new laptop, I might prioritize things like processing speed, screen size, and battery life, and then I'd rate different brands based on how well they meet those criteria.
Exactly. And marketers use this data to figure out what attributes are most important to their target audience and how they can adjust their product or message to better appeal to those preferences.
So if they see that consumers are really prioritizing sustainability, they might start emphasizing their eco-friendly practices.
Precisely. The ATO model is a valuable tool for understanding consumer perceptions and tailoring, marketing strategies accordingly.
It's like they're reading our minds, or at least our online reviews.
In a way, they're constantly gathering data and insights from our online behavior, our social media interactions, and even our purchase history.
It's both impressive and a little creepy how much information they have about us.
It's the reality of the digital age. Data is the new currency, and the companies that can harness this data effectively are the ones that are going to succeed.
So it's more important than ever to be aware of how our data is being used and to make conscious choices about what we share online.
Absolutely. We need to be informed consumers and protect our privacy, but we also need to acknowledge that data can be used for good. It can help brands create better products, provide more personalized experiences, and even address social issues.
So it's about finding that balance between innovation and responsibility.
You got it. And that's the challenge for marketers in the 21st century.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how my mind works and how marketers are trying to influence my every move.
It's all about awareness. Once you understand the game, you can play it smarter.
So as we wrap up this exploration of consumer behavior and marketing communications, what's one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important takeaway is to be mindful. Be aware of the messages you're being bombarded with every day and question the motivations behind them. Don't let marketing dictate your choices. Instead, use your knowledge to make informed decisions that align with your values and your goals.
That's great advice. It's about taking back control and becoming a conscious consumer. Okay, I'm ready to put on my consumer psychologist hat on and really analyze my own behavior. What are some of the things I should be paying attention to?
A great starting point is to think about your own personal hot buttons. What are the things that make you more likely to buy a product? Which emotional appeals resonate with you the most? How do social media and online communities influence your purchasing decisions?
Those are good questions. I guess I've never really stopped to think about it consciously.
It's easy to just go through life on autopilot, but once you start paying attention to your own reactions and motivations, you can really become a more savvy and empowered consumer.
So how do I do that? Where do I even begin?
One helpful exercise is to think about a recent purchase you made. Maybe it was something big like a new car, or something small like a pair of shoes. Whatever it was, try to break down the decision-making process. What factors influenced your choice? Were you drawn to the product's features, its price, its social status, or was it more about an emotional connection or a personal value?
Okay, that's a good idea. I bought a new fitness tracker recently. I guess I was drawn to its sleek design and all the cool features it offered, but I also think there was a part of me that wanted to be seen as someone who's health conscious and tech savvy.
There you go. You're already starting to identify those underlying motivations. It's not just about the product itself, it's about what it represents and how it makes you feel.
That's interesting. I never thought about it that way before, but it makes sense. We buy things not just for their functional value, but also for their symbolic value.
Exactly, and marketers understand this. They tap into our aspirations, our insecurities, our desire to belong. They create narratives around their products that make us feel like we need them to be happy, successful, or accepted.
It's a bit manipulative when you think about it.
It can be, but it's also just human nature. We're social creatures, and we're constantly seeking ways to connect with others and express ourselves, and our consumption choices are a big part of that.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing to be influenced by marketing. It's just about being aware of it and making conscious decisions.
That's the key. The goal is not to become immune to marketing. That's impossible. The goal is to become a more informed and discerning consumer, to understand the game and to play it on your own terms.
So what are some tips for becoming a more mindful consumer?
Here are a few things to keep in mind. Question your impulses. Before you make a purchase, especially a big one, take some time to reflect on your motivations. Are you buying this because you really need it? Or are you being swayed by clever marketing social pressure or a fleeting emotional impulse? Do your research. Don't just take marketing claims at face value. Read reviews, compare prices, and investigate the company's values and practices.
Got it.
Be wary of social media. Remember that social media is often a highlight reel, not real life. Don't compare yourself to others or feel pressured to buy things you don't need or can't afford.
Right.
Support brands that align with your values. Vote with your wallet by choosing companies that are ethical, sustainable, and socially responsible.
Makes sense.
Curate your online environment. Unfollow accounts that make you feel bad about yourself or that promote excessive consumption. Fill your feed with content that inspires you, educates you, and brings you joy. And lastly, take breaks from technology. Disconnect from the digital world regularly to give yourself time to reflect, recharge, and reconnect with your own values and priorities.
Those are all great tips. It's about taking back control of our attention, our emotions, and our spending habits.
Exactly. It's about being mindful, intentional, and empowered as consumers.
Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about myself, about marketing, and about that complex interplay between psychology and consumer behavior.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you. I hope this knowledge empowers you to navigate the marketplace with more confidence and awareness.
I definitely feel more equipped to make conscious decisions and to avoid those marketing traps. Thanks for guiding me through this fascinating journey.
You're very welcome. Happy shopping.
And to our listener, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of consumer behavior and marketing communications. Until next time, be mindful, be curious, and be an empowered consumer.